I'm going to explain how the marking works for the risk assessment for the IOSH Managing Safely. I'll also go through the first section. The way that the marking scheme works is for this whole first section, so name of the assessor, date, the time. I'm not sure why the time is important, but it's been asked for, so make sure it's filled in. The work area, the task being assessed, all of that is worth 1 mark. So I'm going to come back to that, go through it in a second, because even though it's only worth 1 mark, as you'll see in a sec, this sets you up. If you make the right decisions in this first bit, you'll be set up so that the rest of it is fairly easy and you're not going to lose marks, because the way that the rest of it works, you've got now 4 rows. This down at the bottom, by the way, the review date, the signature, training provider name, that's worth another 1 mark. So all the rest of it, all the marks that you need to score, and you need to score 23 out of a possible 38 marks in order to pass this. So you might think, oh well, this first section's not really that important because I'm only missing out on 1 mark, but let me explain. You'll get a mark for what is the hazard, that's worth 1. Who might be harmed is worth a mark. How might people be harmed is worth a mark, obviously if they're all correct. Existing control measures is worth a mark. A mark for risk rating, you've got to work that out correctly. Additional controls is worth a mark. The new risk rating after the additional controls is worth a mark. Action monitored by whom, action monitored by when, all of that is worth 1 mark. So for a row, there's a potential of 9 marks per row, of which there are 4 rows. But if you get any of those 9 things wrong that I've laid out, so maybe you don't actually get the hazard correct. What you've put in there is actually not a hazard. You've mistaken what the meaning of hazard is, and you've put something in that first box there that's not a hazard. Well, the way the mark scheme works is that you won't get marks for that entire row. So you're not losing 1 mark, you're losing all 9 marks that you could have had for that entire row. And the same goes for any of the other things. If you fail to correctly work out the risk rating, you don't just lose the 1 mark, you lose 9 marks, because that whole row will be deemed to be wrong. So very important that you set things up properly right from the get-go, which brings me back to this first section. Obviously, name of assessor, that's your name, the date, the time. It's the work area and the task being assessed that I want to just spend a couple of minutes talking about, because what you want to do is make sure that the work area and the task being assessed is going to be something that's going to give you enough hazards to talk about. Like the work area, that's fairly straightforward. Just describe the work area. Is it a workshop? Is it a factory floor? Is it a reception area? Is it a loading bay? Whatever the case may be. Task being assessed, again, just describe it in simple terms. You don't have a lot of room to write a lot of stuff, but just make sure that whatever task you use, what you want to do really is already have the 4 hazards in mind that you're going to be identifying. Don't just pick hazards from different, I suppose you could pick hazards from all sorts of different tasks, but then you're going to have to write different tasks into what is a very small box. It just becomes a little bit complicated. It just becomes more complicated than it needs to be. Let's keep things simple. So the task being assessed, pick a task, and it can almost be any task. What I'm going to do, I'm going to create videos about the other areas of this risk assessment project. But for now, what I'll say is the task that I am going to base the videos on, I'm going to pick the most innocuous task of inputting data into a computer. Because a lot of people that do this course say to me, well, I can't think of any hazards. I've got a low risk job. I only work in an office. I just can't think of any hazards. Well, in order for this video to be as useful as possible, what I'll do is just base the whole thing on me being in front of a computer inputting data. Now, if I can come up with full hazards for that, then you're probably going to be able to come up with full hazards for whatever job that you've got in mind.